welcome to another episode of Surgeons' Lives. I'm your host, John Monson. My guest today is Mary Hawn, who is the professor and chair of the Department of Surgery in Stanford in California. Mary is a Michigan native, having grown up on the shores of Lake Michigan. She originally thought she was going to be a pediatrician, but surgery soon called when she did her surgical attachments, and before long she became passionate about general surgery and spent a fellowship time in Oregon before taking up her position and faculty in the University of Alabama. That was going to be a 5-year stint, but she ended up staying there for 14 years before moving to her current position in California. She's married to Eben Rosenthal, who is the head of otorhinolaryngology, a head and neck cancer surgeon in Vanderbilt. He moved there some 2.5 years ago, and so we spent some time having a conversation about how anyone can balance these professional aspirations and with personal lives, which is always challenging with two highly successful surgeons. So without further ado, we'll go across and listen to what she has to say. But before that, please like and subscribe to the channel and send me your comments and tell me what you think and maybe who you'd like to hear interviewed in due course. I'm John Monson, and this is Surgeons' Lives. Anyway, so thanks for taking the time. It's not too bad for you, 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen any previous episodes of what's very grandly entitled Surgeons' Lives. But it's really, obviously we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the usual stuff, career development and
Mhm.
mentors, etc. But as much as anything, I started this because everybody can read that on PubMed or Google,
Mhm.
and I wanted to try and talk to surgeons to show to other people, particularly younger people, that there's more to surgeons than just turning
Yeah.
up and writing a paper and then 6 grants or being president or whatever. So that's why the subtitle is called Stuff That Matters.
Okay.
Whether you've got 100 papers or two or 500 really doesn't matter at the end of the day. So what I ask people to do, and I'll ask you to do it, is just to walk us through a brief life history, starting with the words "I was born in."
All right. Well, I was born in a small town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan called Manistee, Michigan. It's a town of maybe about 2,500 people on Lake Michigan, and grew up there in a small town, and then matriculated to the University of Michigan. I was in a program that no longer exists, but it was called the Interflex program, which was when I was there, a 7-year pre-med program. So basically, you got accepted to med school straight out of high school
Yeah.
and did your undergraduate work and had some kind of integration of undergrad and med school. And then had some, great times there and fell in love with surgery on my 3rd year clerkship and decided to apply.
Why
And
do you,
yeah.
was there medicine in the family? Or
Oh, okay. Yes. All right. So a little bit more about my background. My father was a dentist. And unfortunately, he died when I was 9 in an accident. So, and I am one of 7 children. I'm the 6th of 7.
gosh,
Yes. So, I think that was really a major kind of turning point in our childhood of losing our father at such a young age.
yeah,
And also for my mom, she had never remarried, but raised her 7 children and sent them all to college, which wasn't necessarily. I mean, they both had college educations, but
sure.
I think where we grew up, not everybody went on to college.
7 kids, though, raising them
Yes,
alone, if
yes,
you like, is no
yes,
easy task.
yes. So very tough female role model in my life for sure. Very resilient. Yes, yeah, yeah.
So you knew
Yes.
you wanted to do medicine.
I knew I wanted to do medicine at a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't exactly know why, but it was just something that it seemed interesting to me. I think I was curious about the human body. Um, I liked that, um, living in a small town, you knew the doctors in the town. They
Yeah.
were very engaged, involved in the community, and it just seemed like a great specialty in so many different ways.
But of course, that straight out of house, effectively out of high school into medicine is the European model,
hmm
very much so. And they say the program doesn't exist anymore. Was there a reason or
Right. Well, I think the program was initially developed to try and get people more engaged, involved in primary care,
right?
and become primary care physicians for the state of Michigan. And I think, so I always joke around that so the Upper Peninsula, the nickname for the Upper Peninsula is the UP. And if you're from the UP, you're called a Uper. So, I always joke around that I got in on the Uper quota because they would usually take one student a year into this program from the Upper Peninsula.
Whatever it takes.
Exactly. But anyway, and after your first year of college, you did an internship with a primary care physician in rural Michigan. So the way the program was designed was to try and create more humane physicians that were committed to, taking care of the rural populations in Michigan. But it was like super competitive to get into. So everybody went into ophthalmology and neurosurgery and dermatology and things like that. So I think after a while, they just decided um, to sunset the program, that it really wasn't achieving the ends that they were hoping. And just now they just have the regular matriculation into medical school.
It's kind of interesting. Multiple countries around the world struggle with this issue of creating primary care docs for
Yes,
their community, their country, their society, and they all have different ways of doing it, and they all fail. I mean, it's not easy. Um,
right.
it's and the number of people that go into programs, on the back that were ostensibly set up to achieve something, who then
Mhm.
instantly sidestep into something else, it's just uh,
Yeah.
there has to
Gonna
be a
get that
different way.
number. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Has to be a different way. So surgery was just you did your attachment, and this was for you. It was immediately obvious, or
How I got interested in surgery. Well, I originally thought I'd be interested in otolaryngology. Kind of when you're a medical student, you're talking to other students who are like, oh, it's a great mix of surgery and medicine, great anatomy, diverse problems that you take care of the different senses. And so I thought I was kind of heading toward otolaryngology, did my surgery rotation, really loved it, and thought, that's great. I love surgery. And then I did my otolaryngology rotation. I said, nope, I actually really like general surgery and not ENT. And so switched over to what I was planning to apply to.
and stayed in Michigan.
Stayed in Michigan, stayed in Ann Arbor for another 7 years, doing my general surgery residency, research years. And during that time, I met my husband, who did match in otolaryngology at Michigan. He was a medical student when we met. And so I finished a couple of years before he did. So actually was on faculty at Michigan for a couple of years while he was finishing his residency.
And that was before or after you went to Oregon?
That was before. Yeah.
Ah,
So 2 years on faculty at Michigan while he was finishing his residency.
yeah.
And then we did fellowships in Oregon together.
Ah, okay. Right, right.
hmm
Oregon was the laparoscopic Lee Swanstrom sort of
Actually, I was at OHSU with Brett
the other
Shepard.
side. The other
Yep.
side.
The
Yeah.
other side of the street. Yep.
Okay. And then a dramatic departure. Uh,
Yes.
you couldn't ask for two different environments, or I would
Yeah.
imagine from Michigan to Alabama.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. So, that dual professional couple looking for jobs. When we started looking, we said we'd go anywhere but New York, LA, or the Deep South. So, we had to redefine what the Deep South was. But they were, I would say there was just a couple places that had really good jobs for both of us. There were places that we looked at that might have had a good job for me, but kind of a made up job for my husband or vice versa. But I think at UAB there was, we thought there were great jobs for both of us. We would go there for 5 years, and then start our career and then look for someplace else, and ended up staying there for 14.
But I mean, you just raised the reality of the situation, which is that if it's a couples match, if you like,
Right,
regardless of what level, you go where the couples match is, and
right.
everything is secondary because otherwise one of the partners is a loser, and that's not sustainable, really, is it? I mean, or it's difficult,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I always tell because I think a lot of younger folks who are in the situation that we were, that it's like the most stressful year of your life, because fellowship isn't so bad. Everybody has a fellowship job, but not everybody has a job when you're finishing fellowship. So trying to match all those things up,
yeah.
everybody's going to compromise. That there's not going to be the ideal job and the ideal location for both people, and so you're going to have to compromise and make the best. And I think, when we went to UAB, I think I was more reticent to go to the South than my husband. Um, but at the same time, had great mentors there and didn't know anybody, I think, from the state ever, or anybody who lived there before we moved there. So it was quite a transition.
Um, I mean, that goes without saying. Of course, it would have been a dramatic cultural shift. Um, how would you describe it? As in, if somebody said to you, well, like, what was Alabama like?
Mhm. I
Um,
think, yeah, the things. So UAB is amazing, and
yeah,
UAB itself is very multicultural, very kind of open minded, and and my husband's Jewish and I'm not. We don't have the same last name. Our realtor is driving us around through different communities, and we go through this place, Mountain Brook, which is, a very lovely, affluent community just outside of Birmingham that has great public schools. Because originally, when we were moving there, we said we wanted to live in a neighborhood with sidewalks, good public schools, all those things. So it's showing us those neighborhoods. And it was kind of apparent that that was not the neighborhood for us. And, just driving us around, and, oh, this is the Jewish country club. And the, Birmingham Country Club, I think at that time didn't have any Black members. The entire Mountain Brook public school system didn't have any Black students, period.
yeah,
There was no busing in Mountain Brook. So when the school kind of busing laws and acts came out, kind of the way to respond to that was to just not have busing. And so that was kind of a lot of my first introduction, was just going around with the realtor and just seeing culturally like how differently Birmingham evolved.
yeah,
And so I have to say we got really lucky. We ended up buying a house in the city proper of Birmingham, so which meant we would send our kids to private school. But we landed in a great neighborhood of dual professional couples with different last names and different religions, and so that felt like very much like home. And in fact, I still to this day feel that my friends that I made in Alabama are more liberal than my friends I had in Ann Arbor, Michigan, than the people I know here in Palo Alto, California, because they were truly, cared deeply about
yeah,
the social problems in Alabama.
yeah. I mean, it's the U.S. is I always say to people that everything you say about the U.S. is true because it's so big. It's
Yes,
the poorest, the richest, the most racist, the less racist,
right.
all of those things. Somewhere it's one of those things, etc. And sometimes the least expected.
Hmm.
As you say, you're
Yes.
going to what I think to be fair, most people would say is the Deep South.
Yes, yes, it was.
Regardless of your
I
new
mean, I think just
definition.
look at the ruling that just came out of the Alabama Supreme
Yeah.
Court, right? Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's, I obviously I'm uh, from the other side of the Atlantic, and spent most of my years over there, and so it's a different type of culture, and sometimes people here think I come from a communist country, etc.
Hmm.
Which you don't think that at all, but it's very different. And of course, UAB, had a kind of a legendary leader with Kirby Bland when you went there,
Yes. Hmm.
etc. And you transitioned, or they transitioned, I should say, with Herb.
So I left right before Herb got
Oh,
there,
you left
and
just before.
yeah.
Okay.
So Kirby recruited me there, but the person who really recruited me there was Selwyn Vickers. He was the
Yeah.
chief of GI surgery at that time, and he was the one who recruited me there. And then he left after about 5 years uh, of my time there to be the chair of surgery at University of Minnesota.
Yeah. And has now moved on again. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah. So you then transitioned to um, the place that isn't a real world, Palo Alto.
Yes.
Um, again, extraordinarily intellectually exciting. Um, but and was that the attraction, or did you have an ambition where you when you were going into medical school in Michigan, were you always going to be a chair? Did you want to be a chair? Was that the sort of the North Star for you?
Not at all. There were not many women in leadership in academic medicine at that time, and especially coming from a small town. I think when I initially went, I thought I would be a pediatrician or a primary care doctor in a small town because that's what I knew. Um, but and I tend to think of myself a little bit more as like the accidental leader. So I first got my division chief job when Selwyn left to go to the University of Minnesota, and I thought we would then be doing a search for our next division chief. And Dr. Bland basically, I think at a little bit at Selwyn's urging, or maybe a lot of it at Selwyn's urging, asked me to step into that role. And I have to say, it was really intimidating. I was just getting promoted to associate professor. I thought, who's going to want to come and work for me? I don't really have a reputation. Why would somebody want to come and work for me? So that, like the imposter syndrome that many of us feel
Yeah.
at a time. But I have to say, that job was an amazing job. I think it's still my favorite job to this day. And I tell people all the time that being a division chief is probably the best job out there in academic surgery because you're kind of working side by side more with your people, building your programs
Yeah.
together, and really involved in all missions together. And being a department chair, which I don't think I really, again, it was one of those things. I've been division chief for 9 years, and I thought I can't do this job forever. I better start kind of looking. And my name was getting put in for department chair jobs. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just apply because I knew the job was coming open at UAB. So I'll apply for a couple of those jobs and kind of get some practice. It's been a while since I've interviewed. And so I applied to a couple jobs, and then it became apparent, fairly early on in the search that I was like a real candidate. Like they were legitimately interested in me. Again, I was like, whoa, totally surprised. Um, and then again, the dual professional piece comes in that it's really hard to. And my husband was also a division chief. Okay, so here we are, both division chiefs. I'm like, we're never leaving Alabama. Like, where are we ever going to find jobs? And so and Samhain was the dean at that point, and making my husband is an otolaryngologist. It was a division in the Department of Surgery, and they were basically making it its own department. So he would be the department chair. So anyway, so we went to interview at Stanford, and I first had my kind of airport interview. We used to do airport interviews and not Zoom. And then the dean called me and said, we'd like to invite you on campus for an interview. But I want to know now, like if there's, we want to get the search done. So I would just want to know now, is there anything that would keep you from coming? And I said, well, my husband would need a good job. And he's like, who's your husband? And so they, started working with him and, what opportunities they had at Stanford. And they were looking for a new leader of their cancer center, basically a medical director of the cancer programs at Stanford, which is kind of, and still is like one of the premier programs that we invest in. They were, and he was a head and neck surgeon who did mostly reconstructive surgery for head and neck cancer, but did a lot of research in cancer tumor imaging. So it was one of those things where nothing's ever perfect for both people, but these were two great jobs at an amazing
Yeah.
institution with a lot of resources. And we said, if we're ever going to leave Alabama, which we didn't feel like we needed to leave, but at the same time, we never saw ourselves living there for our entire lives.
Yeah.
But we were very happy there, very comfortable. We're like, we're never going to get another chance to go together for two good jobs at an amazing institution. So that was how we ended up there and or up here, whatever. And
Yeah.
it was really a great, a tough transition, but a great transition too.
Kind of
It's hard
interesting.
to leave. Mm-hmm.
Shortly after I moved to the States, I did that Harvard course on academic leadership for
Yeah.
physicians. And, the Harvard model uses case studies, of various events. And, the ongoing saga, which was Stanford and UCSF and
Oh yeah. Yes. The
um,
merger, demerger.
yeah,
Yes.
what was a multiple case study.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Then
Yes.
they
Yes.
tried this, and that was a disaster. And then they tried
Mm-hmm.
this, and that was a disaster. Um, so, um, so did you? I mean, Stanford is has all of the obvious positives, but was there anything that scared you about it?
Again, I think that imposter syndrome
Yeah,
and was a little bit intimidating, but mostly it's it was excitement for a lot of different reasons. And part of like I didn't know much about the program, and Stanford really had a very small faculty. A lot of the teaching faculty were part of this group called the Palo Alto Medical
yeah,
Foundation. They weren't Stanford faculty. And I think after that kind of merger, demerger, the School of Medicine really committed to building up an academic faculty on the Stanford campus. And Tom Crummell, my predecessor, I think really gets a lot of credit for really developing, recruiting great people, building solid academic programs. So it was in no way kind of a fixer-upper job. It was a good solid program that there were some opportunities in different areas and some incredible strengths in areas as well. But we also had two new hospitals opening. So I took my job in 2015. The Children's Hospital opened in 2018. The adult hospital opened in 2019. So about a year later than we were supposed to. But that was just an incredible opportunity because
yeah,
new hospitals bring new resources. You can hire more
yeah,
people. So it wasn't a job where you kind of it couldn't really grow. I mean, the plan was that we needed to grow our programs to fill these two hospitals, and so those things were like really exciting to me. When I was at UAB, we after about 3 years or 4 years of our time there, they opened a new hospital, and just seeing what a new hospital in growth can do for
yeah.
programs is impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. It's that phenomenon of, when you come to visit, do you see cranes? You know, if you see,
Hmm.
if you don't see any cranes, go back to the airport. If you see cranes, that's probably something good is going to happen. Throughout all of this, I'm guessing you must have had at least one, if not more than one mentor, and uh, most people do, whether they call them mentors or not.
Hmm.
Uh, was your mentorship experience intentional or just serendipitous? As in,
I
did
think,
you seek out
yeah,
mentors, you know?
yeah. So I think both. In I would say so. Thinking of mentors that have been really important in my career, I would say first. In some of them, so it's hard to. I think there's mentors and sponsors, right?
Yeah.
So I think Laser Greenfield, who was my department chair at Michigan, and Mike Mulholland, who was the program director at the end, were always kind of strong sponsors out there. And you didn't always know that they were doing things to help advance your career, but every once in a while I'd hear something about Kirby Bland saying, "Oh, Mary Laser is so proud of you," and so you knew that they were kind of
Yeah.
talking about you, and then, but my real mentors and sponsors too, I would say, were Selwyn, who recruited
Yep.
me there. I think has always done things to try and advise me, uh, um, help kind of guide my career, and I think also is an amazing sponsor for many things that have happened for me in my career. Another person is Lee Newmeyer, who I met because I was trying to get a research grant done in the VA, and I needed access to VA data, and they initially said no, and she was on the governing body of data access. So I just tried again, and I said, no, this is really what we need it for. I think this is a good use of the data. So she sent me an email back, and she said, well, we have some concerns. Let's talk and figure out how we could potentially make this work. And so in that kind of relationship of getting a research project going, and her helping me figure out how to do it, she became an incredible kind of mentor in my career, and also a sponsor, and then a friend. So I think we
Yeah.
share a lot of things. Her husband's also a surgeon, and they've had the dual career
Yeah.
crises as well and challenges. So anyway, so
Sure.
I would say she's been another incredibly strong, important mentor and sponsor in my life. And then when I got to UAB, I just went around and met with a bunch of people. I had done basic science research during my undergrad and medical school and residency. And during that time, I also got my master's in public health. When I moved to Alabama, I had a 3 and 1 year old, a husband who was doing basic science research too. And I was like, I just can't do it. I can't do that all. But have this other tool set of data sciences and epidemiology. So I went around and met with different people. And the woman who is the chair of preventive medicine, Katerina Kifa, incredibly successful data science researcher, kind of took me under her wing and just helped me identify some projects, helped me write grants, was an incredible mentor on how to navigate that. And, I am so grateful to this day, and introduced me to other people and collaborators. But it was just, and I think it's really good. And then she was also somebody I could go talk to and say, like, when the division chief job came open
Yeah.
and they were asking me to do it, I didn't think it was like a good time for me to do it in my career. I just thought had other things kind of that were just, my grants were just, really getting going and things like that. And so I went and talked to her, and because she's a very uninterested mentor, rather somebody in your department who might have a strong feeling one way or the other. So she was a really good um, mentor for me to be able to reach out to for questions and support and advice like that.
It's the way you describe that is, I mean, as you start off by saying, you had all of these things to do, you just can't do all of that. That's not legal for, a famous department chair to say you cannot be good at everything. You're not meant to say that sort of stuff. But it's true, the triple or quadruple threat, it always struck me over the years, certainly when I was a chair, never really existed anyway. People are
Mm-hmm.
people are not good at absolutely everything, number one. And number two, there's a maximum of what you can do. But I mean, what you describe is I don't know if the trendy word would be a vulnerable experience of realizing that you needed help. and going and asking for help. You know, I think that is my personal view is that that's incredibly important to just, you know, front up with people and say, hey, I'm I'm new here. You know, can you help me? Um, because it's uh, you know, surgery has never been very good at accepting the fact that people aren't fully minted the day they turn up. Um,
Hmm.
and you know, how do you, you know, mentor young faculty in that respect?
Yeah, I think, based on that experience and other people who I've seen who have done it well, is when new people show up, I'm like, you're not going to be busy the first 6 months, right? Your clinic's not going to be busy. You've got to find your way around this institution anyway. So just look up people that you think you might have shared interests in and with, and make appointments and go talk about your scholarship, your science, and look for opportunities for collaboration. But really to take that time early on. And I tell them, like, you think you're going to have all the time in the world as well, that, oh, I can put this off for a year or two, but that time goes by quickly, and especially when you're on a clock as an assistant professor in order to get promoted, that that's something you really have to intentionally focus and on in the very beginning.
Yeah, uh, you know, that this being on the clock, or they think they have time. I mean, one of the things I
Yeah.
always tell people, if you have a project or an interest or a passion, start it on day one. Because this business of, you know, I'll just get myself clinically stable and one thing or another, and then I'll start to do this, that never
Hmm.
works because it just becomes overwhelming, number one. And number two, you know, it takes a discipline to say, okay, on day one, I'm going to go and talk about this project, which will take another 2 years to do anyway.
Hmm.
But I think it's you're right. I mean, it's important, you know, to hit the ground running in terms of your focus. How would you describe yourself as a chair, or how would others describe you as a chair? Do you think?
Oh,
Maybe
that's a good
differently.
question. Let's see.
Yeah.
How would I want them to describe me?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, I like this phrase of like eyes on, hands off.
Okay.
So that I'm really aware of everything that's going on, and I want to know and I want to understand, but I don't, I have great division chiefs. I don't want to kind of reach in, and because I really appreciated that from Kirby. Like, he was not a micromanager at all. Like, I would go to him with big problems and big successes, but otherwise, he let me make the majority of the decisions. And so um, and that was great for me and my own growth. So I'd like to hope that people think I care, that I am supportive, that I'm like their cheerleader, back there hoping and helping them reach their success, that I'm available if they need me, but I'm also um, don't want to be running every minute of every day. There's a couple things I'm a little more in the weeds on, just in terms of like OR efficiency and things that I think I can use my influence to try and make their life better. Yeah.
So, you know, eyes on, hands off. So that's what you want to do. Do you succeed?
I think so. I think people always will do the end around, right, and come to me if they're unhappy with their division chief. And I mostly try to listen. And then I will pull the division chief aside and say, hey, I think you need to listen to more a little bit about this, or maybe reach out to this person. Um, and sort this out. And I have some pretty strong feelings about a couple things, and I'll let them know, but I'm not um I think totally going to impose my
Sure.
view or my
Yeah.
feelings. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on that, you know, when you started down this line, there weren't a lot of women leading departments or leading divisions,
Hmm.
etc. Um, that is definitely different now, but to what degree, you know, is obviously a debate, and it's a debate that's actually not that easy to have. Um,
Hmm.
it's not. totally dissimilar to what's going on in the Middle East. It's very difficult to have the debate.
Mhm.
Um, what's your, if somebody outside of surgery said, so, what's the deal about women in surgery? I thought women didn't do surgery. How do you how do you think we're doing on that? Are we obviously making some progress? Enough? Too much? Not, different the wrong
Yeah.
way?
Yeah, I think a lot of women, I don't know, women in my generation go two ways. One, you can be like a super fierce advocate for there's not enough, we need more, we need more, we need more. And then others are like, I don't want to be seen as a woman surgeon or a woman chair. I just want to be a surgeon or a chair. And I
Yeah.
probably fall a little bit more into that camp. That I think that everybody should be able to have opportunities and chances to succeed in that. That we need to, recruit. So we're doing great on women in terms of residencies, medical schools and residencies. I would say we're struggling maybe a little bit more on um, minorities,
Yeah.
especially Hispanic and Black minorities coming into medical school and coming into surgery. So those are areas I think that we could do better. And it's just that is definitely like how do we get people in the pipeline? So kind of to answer your question, I don't think it should be an us versus them. I don't think it should be seen as a zero-sum game that that every time a man gets a job, it means a woman didn't or something like that. So I think that that is divisive. And last year we had this uh, circumstance where we had an amazing match across general surgery, plastic surgery, vascular surgery. So of our 13 categorical residents, 12 were women. Probably half were some from an underrepresented in medicine group. And our director of communications put out this like face sheet in case you missed it. These are the
Yeah.
new trainees coming to the farm. And we got totally trolled.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Totally. And it was in part because of something else that had happened at the Stanford Law School where they brought in a very conservative federalist judge and the students kind of basically protested in his lecture. That made Fox News. And so people were out there kind of trolling Stanford already. And when this came up, I think it got like over 16 million views and lots of comments, including even Elon Musk commenting on our face sheet. So we were quite concerned about our trainees who we had accepted into our program and the disparaging things that were being said about them based on their gender or their race or both. And
And what was the main theme?
just no white men.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right. Our one guy is an Asian guy. So, and just, Stanford's woke. Stanford's, look at,
yeah,
I would never go there for surgery. This is how they're deciding, they're so woke. They're just, checking all the boxes around
yeah.
diversity and this, that, and the other thing. But I have to say, so we didn't really engage because we're like, it's just going to die. It's going to go through a cycle. They're going to go find somebody else to like troll. But what I was really, heartened by is that the Med Twitter people actually did come out and kind of fight back a little bit on them or just say congratulations, this is amazing, way to go Stanford and stuff like that. So but we decided ourselves we didn't want to get into
Yeah.
any debate on it. We just didn't think it was worthy of debate. And it's
That's
and this whole thing of like academic freedom and all the discourse that's happening on campuses right now, and the politicization of it, between the congressional hearings and um, we had an event on campus last week or actually it was this week for the department chairs, so the whole university, and they brought up the whole academic freedom thing, and so they talked a little bit about the University of Chicago that has it basically says we're not doing trigger warnings, we're not creating safe spaces, words aren't harmful, like you have to like this is freedom of speech. And has a very different policy than a lot of universities have taken. And one of the things they talked about is this book called The Coddling of the American Mind. So I've been listening to that over the last several days. And I don't know if you've read the essay in the Atlantic or have listened to that book.
No.
But it's basically saying that we're like by creating the safe spaces, we are basically fragilizing
Yeah.
our younger generation. That if we're protecting them from thoughts and conversations that are
Yeah.
offensive to them, um, that it's not achieving what we're hoping to achieve. So my daughter, who is in that generation, totally believes differently from this book. So I think um, I think in my generation, you read it and you're like, yes, it makes sense. And so I think it's a good thing to read. And then I want to read the rebuttals to their book.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's uh it's a cycle of what goes on.
Hmm.
You see the difference from the other side of the Atlantic as well, which,
Yeah.
sometimes in the UK, I'm from Ireland originally, which is actually a very different country to the UK. Uh,
Hmm.
and you see some of the stuff that goes on in the UK is just like throwing, chum in the water for trolls because it's
Hmm.
stupid stuff. I remember when I worked in London, the council banned the use of black bin bags because they thought they were racist, the connotation.
Hmm.
And so they introduced
Hmm.
gray bin bags, I think.
Hmm.
And you think,
Yeah.
okay, well, apart from the fact that it's stupid, um, is that actually your job I mean, who has a job
Right.
to decide the color of the refuse bags? So, but anyway, so and I'll say Friday. So thank God it's Friday. Friday evening when you switch the light off. What does Mary Hawn do? I mean, when you kick the shoes off and
Yeah. Well, this Friday tonight, I'm going out to a recruitment dinner. But
oh,
normally, what would we do?
boo, that's terrible. That's
Oh
that's
no. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. So one thing we didn't talk about is my husband,
yeah,
about 2.5 years ago, left Stanford and went to Vanderbilt and took the chair job of otolaryngology there. So we don't live in the same place, and he mostly comes back here. This is home. I've got the dogs, and our daughter's in San Francisco. So he mostly travels back this way. So a lot of times might be on my own on a Friday night, but I have a great group of neighbors that often will have like a game night, get together, have dinner, play games. Or might go see a show or catch up or do my epic. Um, that's are often different things I'll do on a Friday night.
I mean, it's a pretty unusual arrangement that the Vanderbilt, Vandy, and Stanford.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
what did you say? How many years ago?
2.5.
2.5.
Hmm.
Um, learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, I think in the end, he liked his job here. He learned a lot, but it wasn't the job that he really
Yeah.
wanted. Like I said, whenever you do this, somebody's going to compromise, and
Yeah.
so he decided the kids were out of the house. And we're both busy anyway. We both travel a lot for work, so it's often. I mean, I was often home a lot, or he was often home alone a lot as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, not obviously as much as living in two different places,
Sure.
but so I think it's going okay. It's you have to be intentional
Yeah.
about spending time together, and in some ways I feel like we almost talk a little bit more
Yeah.
than we did when we lived in the same house, and we would be like on our laptops or on our phone
Yeah.
or doing some things. So it's almost like we do talk a little bit more, but it is lonely definitely at times, and I feel like you're not kind of building your life together.
Yeah. So, are you optimistic for the young surgeon?
I am optimistic for the young surgeon. I feel like surgery is just continually innovating, just doing things that we would never have done when we were in training. to really try and solve problems for patients. I think that we will not be replaced by AI.
No.
I would worry about not necessarily that radiology or pathology is going to be replaced by AI, but I think that it might make their jobs different. Um, just like I always say, like, EKG machines have been giving you interpretation of the EKG
Yeah.
since, I was in medical school, right? And then the cardiologist would read it 2 weeks later.
And now
And
the stethoscope actually tells you what you're hearing.
yes, yes. So I think I think it's only going to be good. Like if AI looks at a CT scan, but then a radiologist has to go through and
Sure.
confirm things and
Uh,
put it into context and things like that. So I don't think radiologists are going to go away. But I think for surgeons, I think that AI might help us in some areas. But what I think is really exciting is just, we're more and more operating off of images. And how can we augment those images and use other technology to really make our surgery safer, more precise, less invasive, more successful?
yeah. Um, I was just thinking back to an interview I did with Julie Freischlag, by the way, and one of the
Hmm.
ways she describes the DEI side of things, or not DEI, but that whole issue is, she says she never wants to chair a committee where everyone looks like you do.
Right.
And I thought it was a very good phrase. If you can continually be sitting in a room with people that don't look like you, whatever that, and everybody should have that same view. So if you weren't a surgeon, what do you think you would have been?
Um, Maybe an architect.
Ah,
Hmm.
do you have a great building in you?
I think I like design. I like thinking about, form and function. And so I think I don't know, I think that's what I'm maybe more residential, not commercial. I'm not like interested in designing skyscrapers or but designing spaces that
For people.
meet your needs. Yeah,
Yeah,
for people to
yeah.
live in. Yeah.
I didn't actually ask you, I forgot to ask you if you had, yeah, I mean, you've told me a few mentors that may tick that box, but did you have a surgical idol, or do you have a surgical idol who, not necessarily a mentor?
But I have a lot of idols, I think, who are surgeons. But I think, what started was, I think the residents that I worked with when I was a medical student and just feeling that they were the ones that everybody else in the hospital looked to when a patient was sick
Yeah.
or something bad was happening. It's like, the surgical resident, if the surgical resident couldn't do something, then, we're all in trouble. So I love that kind of aspect of the training and a little bit the hubris, right? That, okay, I've got this. We can fix this. So I loved seeing that and being part of that group and team. I think that's what really drew me to this field. So I think it started there, and but I think I talked a little bit about some of my great kind of
Sure.
mentors
Yeah.
and sponsors. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a few uh, rapid fire questions.
Okay.
They're often asked in these type of interviews, and it won't be new to you. They are, of course, how people judge you at the end of the day, regardless. So,
Right.
what's your favorite food?
Oh, I love Thai food.
Thai
Like
food?
a good tom yum soup. Yeah, I like spicy food.
Favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption.
So, if you were stuck on a desert island and you had to listen to one song for the rest of your life,
One song, probably Just Breathe by Eddie Vedder.
best book you ever read?
That's book. Boy, I have so many favorites, but maybe Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner.
You on Friday night, not this Friday, uh,
Yep.
but on Friday night, you have hosting a dinner and you have two extra dinner slots, two guests from anyone in history, dead or alive.
Boy, anyone in history? Um, Hmm. I think I'd like to have, I don't know, let me think. I have to think about that one for a second. Um, for a lot of people out there, but I mean, I'm th think names that are coming to mind, like Martin Luther King, um, so steady in his conviction. Abraham Lincoln. I think people are just fierce and brave, right?
Yeah,
Um, uh,
those are two pretty good
yeah,
choices. Yeah, they're
yes.
good choices. Home or away?
Homer away for what?
Home or away?
Oh, do I want to be Homer or do I want to be away somewhere else? Um, boy, I love to travel, but I do like being at home.
That'll do. And the
Yeah.
rest of your life in 5 words.
The rest of my life in 5 words. See, fun, active, meaningful, connected, adventurous.
That'll do. Any regrets?
Any regrets? I try not to focus. I mean, I have them, but I try not to focus them. I always like to say, don't look backwards. You're not going there. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So, all right. Well, Mary, well, thank you so much for spending time. I hope it wasn't too boring for you.
No, no, it was great. I would love
Uh,
to interview you and find out more about your life and your career too. I'll have to turn the tables sometime.
yeah, several people have asked to do that, and I'm steadfastly refusing. Thank you so much, and I hope you are successful in your recruitment dinner.
Great. Thank you. All right. Have a great weekend. Bye
Bye.
bye.